Don't regret growing old. It's a privilege denied to many. Heart disease is taking our youth from us. Young people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond are dying needlessly. One of the hardest messages I've ever had to deliver is to convince people that something natural like Extendivite should be taken as a preventative measure. I'm sure you heard an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Extendivite is that ounce. Take Extendivite for 1 year and see what your doctor has to say and how much better you feel. Herbs take time to address the problem. It took years of life to have a problem. Give Extendivite 1 year to fix the problem. Don't wait until it's too late. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or visit us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 19th, 2019, getting into the week here, and I'm feeling a little bit better than I was yesterday. Still not over this, but thanks to everybody who emailed me and inquired after, how I was feeling. I don't know, but over the weekend, I just did something to my left arm, and yesterday, my elbow, it was just in serious pain. It's still with me, but not anywhere near as bad, so I'm on my way to amend, so we can just sort of let that fade off into history. Anyway, we have got lots of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. Put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions here. Okay, let's get right on into it. We're starting to see a breaking in the ranks of the corporate media because, as you know, there was this so-called chemical weapons attack in Ghouta, Syria in 2013. It was easily disproven, not just by the independent media, but the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They said, no, it didn't happen. And this lie has been repeatedly debunked, but the corporate media keeps on saying, oh yes, Assad gassed his own people, Assad gassed his own people, without explaining why Assad would, first of all, gas his own people, knowing that's what the U.S. wants, and two, why he would waste his chemical weapons on women and children instead of on the terrorist groups. It never really made sense. But apparently there's now a mainstream Belgian reporter who was briefly captured by the West Free Syria Army terrorists, and he is now blowing the lid off the lies that the Syrian government committed the chemical attack. Of course, in this post-9/11, post-Saddam's nuclear weapons world, we understand government lies to get what they want from you, whether it's human-caused global warming or whatever. That's how they manipulate you. They surround you with lies and illusions. It's just like the movie Matrix. And if you're a younger member of my audience and you've never seen that movie, you really do need to. I can't imagine anybody hasn't seen The Matrix. Anyway, there's apparently a new effort to try and indict President Assad of Syria up at the International Criminal Court for his gassing of his own people. They're still pushing that. And no evidence. And what's going on here? The Syrian war is nearly over, thanks to the military successes of the Syrian army and its Russian and Iranian allies. And probably exhaustion on both sides is a factor as well. So diplomatic overtures have started to reintegrate Syria into the international system, starting at the regional level. The United Arab Emirates have reopened their embassy in Damascus. The Sudanese president, Assad's near namesake, Omar al-Bashir, has visited Syria, as have senior Egyptian officials. It's all working out, except that's not what the United States wants. So this attempt to get Assad prosecuted is an attempt to stamp out these seedlings of peace before they take root. Because if peace breaks out and Assad is still in charge of Syria, it will be unavoidable that the United States lost this one. And the United States doesn't want to be seen as losing it, no matter how much money it takes, no matter how many of your children have to be sent to be killed and crippled. They want to stay in Syria and pretend the war is just ongoing. We didn't lose. We haven't won yet, but we didn't lose. Same thing in Afghanistan. It's to keep the larger war agenda moving forward. All right. The United States, once again, is demanding. We demand, do you hear? We demand, you evil Putin, you. They are demanding that Russia destroy its 9M729 missile complexes. Now, the United States claims these are in violation of the terms of the INF Treaty. Russia says, no, they are not. This claim is absolutely groundless. And if you want to talk about violating the INF Treaty, let's look at some of those cruise missiles the United States has. So Russia is basically flat out refusing. No, we are not going to be destroying these missiles. And the United States it just seems fixated on this idea that they can continue to bully the rest of the world. Over in Lebanon, they're getting ready to receive U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo this week in his first ever visit at a time when the Lebanese economic political map is being redrawn. And while Lebanon is suffering its most serious economic downturn in recent history, and this is all being caused by the corruption of Lebanon's current political leadership and lower level administrations, but also the U.S. sanctions imposed on Iran. Because Lebanon and Iran were trading partners, and the latest sanctions are the harshest ever imposed. And they're going to dramatically affect Lebanon so long as Trump just keeps it up. So what's the net result of this? The United States is pushing Lebanon into the arms of Iran and Russia. And this has already happened so many times. You'd think somebody inside Foggy Bottom would be looking at that and saying, these policies aren't working. These tariffs and sanctions, they're destroying the American sphere of influence. All of this arm twisting and sanctions and you will do this and do that, they're driving countries out of the United States sphere of influence. And that is a bad, bad thing heading into a new world war. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Up in Afghanistan, there's an argument going on over the Belt and Road Initiative as it goes through Afghanistan. And the United Nations Security Council adopted a resolution extending the mandate of the Council's political mission in Afghanistan for another 6 months. And supposedly this is aimed at strengthening regional economic cooperation involving Afghanistan, including the BRI to connect China to Europe and Africa. And the 2016 and 2017 resolutions always had the same Belt Road Initiative language. The U.S. continues to strongly object. They don't want that Belt and Road in operation because it's going to make it faster and cheaper for Asia to sell products to Europe and for Europe to sell products to Asia. The U.S. can't compete with that. China has poured billions of dollars into this project. The United States has poured trillions of dollars into weapons of war. Guess who's actually winning here? Now, this one came out today. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro visited the White House today and made an unusual trip to the CIA headquarters yesterday, which is definitely kind of interesting. But Trump has announced that the United States is strongly looking at NATO membership for Brazil. Now, why would that be? Brazil is not in the North Atlantic. They're rather out of position to be able to support NATO's original task, which was to protect the North Atlantic sea lanes of communication. But there's something else going on in the background that is just starting to surface, and that is that the United States is taking the attitude that NATO membership means you will promise to buy all your weapons from the United States. And apparently the French defense minister has come on up and said, no, Basically the French Minister of the Armed Forces, Florence Parly, expressed concern that Trump's idea of NATO solidarity is conditional on allies buying this or that equipment from the United States. And he said NATO solidarity clause is called Article 5, not Article F-35. But we have been seeing that an awful lot, where the U.S. is literally arm twisting other countries. You buy our weapons. You don't buy their weapons. You buy our weapons. Germany says it's going to abandon its NATO spending commitments and will spend less than promised. This, of course, has sparked U.S. anger because Trump has criticized European allies for expecting a free ride. Well, they don't get a free ride. They are, in fact, building up their military, and they're committed to the NATO alliance. Worse, when NATO brings about a war, it's going to be fought on their front yards, and I'm sure they're not happy about that. The United States spends as much money as it does on the military because it wants to. And that should not be seen as any kind of a reason for other countries to match that spending and bankrupt their own societies the way the United States is being bankrupt. So apparently Merkel had harsh words saying Germany will not cut foreign aid to raise military spending. Over in Egypt, same thing is happening all over. They're ignoring Washington's warnings and threats, and they're purchasing more than 24 Sukhoi 35 jets from Russia. These are the new updated ones. So Russia has signed a contract with Egypt for the supply of several dozen heavy Sukhoi 35 multi-role fighters, and apparently these are intended to replace the Egyptian older aircraft, Soviet MiG-21s, Chinese J-7s. The fact of the matter is, Russia and China are building more effective, less expensive weapons. And because wars are lost by the country that runs out of money first, obviously countries are going to want to get the most bang for their buck. Not these great hulking, bloated behemoths that look really impressive tied up to the dock or sitting on the tarmac. Now, down in Venezuela, some developments there. First of all, they got the power back on again. Internet usage is back up at its normal levels, so it looks like the country's turned on. And there's an interesting little story that came out of Zero Hedge. British photojournalist Alan Guinaud and Venezuelan journalist filmmaker Carolina Graterol went to Venezuela for a month to shoot a documentary for a major global TV channel. They're not saying which one yet. And they basically talked with journalist Paul Cochran about how corporate media's portrayal of Venezuela is vastly different to their experiences on the ground. Remember when corporate media was saying they don't even have toothpaste, they're all starving to death, and Maduro's destroyed the country. And then you had people just down there going into the supermarkets, and you could see there was plenty of product on the shelf, plenty of customers in the background. And it's just a reminder. The U.S. government and the corporate media are going to say anything to you that they think will get you to go along with yet another war. And I don't really think they're getting a lot of traction right now. There was a big anti-war, hands-off Venezuela protest in front of the White House over the last weekend here. Meanwhile, Venezuela's opposition has taken control of 3 diplomatic facilities here in the United States and is going to attempt to obtain further U.S.-based assets in the near future. Now, these are facilities, diplomatic facilities, that are technically owned by the Venezuelan government, and Juan Guaido's envoy to the U.S. is saying, well, we're now the legitimate government, and if you believe that, then you will let us take these buildings over, which is apparently what the United States is doing, just letting Guaido take over these Venezuelan diplomatic centers. All right, so let's talk about New Zealand. There's a lot of information floating around back and forth, and frankly, more and more of it is feeling like attempts to just cloud and muddy the issue so that nobody really can come to a conclusion. But overall, the consensus by most people is this thing feels very fishy here. And there's, interestingly enough, an article that came out saying that New Zealand citizens have started voluntarily handing in their semi-automatic weapons. Huzzah, huzzah. And this may be an attempt by the media to basically encourage New Zealanders to voluntarily hand in their semi-automatic weapons. Because after all of your neighbors and friends, they're doing it. What's wrong with you? This story is undermined, though, by another story that says basically New Zealanders are rushing to the gun stores and to online facilities to buy guns before the new gun laws take effect. Same phenomenon we see here in the United States. Every time they talk about tighter gun laws, there's a rush on the gun shops. It's panic buying. So apparently the Christchurch branch of Gun City was busy on Saturday with people buying guns and equipment. And this followed the Prime Minister's comments about plans to tighten gun laws. Now, at one point, they said, we're going to ban all semi-automatic weapons. Then they backed off because a lot of people were saying there are legitimate uses for semi-automatic weapons, especially on the ranches, the farms, and in your home. And now they've flip-flopped again, and they're saying, yes, we're going to ban all semi-automatic weapons. You're either going to have a pump weapon or a revolver or a bolt action. Now, Gun City, which we mentioned before, in Christchurch, sold the mosque gunman 4 firearms. But they didn't sell him the military-style semi-automatic he reportedly used. They still don't know where that came from. And apparently somebody decided to take matters into their own hands because nearby, a gun club in Northland was on fire, set on fire. The firefighters are saying it's suspicious. The Kaiteia Gun Club. And a lot of people are talking about that video, and it is very obvious that the powers that be want that to go away. And politicians are demanding more tech censorship, trying to get rid of this video and just absolutely shut it down. It's the beginning of tyranny. Apparently, the Australian telcos are now blocking access to the following websites: vote.co, 4chan.org, 8chan.net, or h.net, liveleak.com, archive.is, bitshoot.com, zerohedge.com, kiwifarms.net, easytv.is, dissenter.com, documentingreality.com, bestgore.com, archive.fio. Now, some of these webmasters have basically challenged some of these Australian telcos, and they actually got a reply from Vodafone saying the issue is you have this video on your server, and as long as that video is on your server, you will be blocked. When you have removed the video, let us know. We may choose to restore your access. So they're really afraid of what's on this video. Now, I haven't looked at the whole video. I looked at a little of it. I agree with those. It's not pleasant to watch. It looks legit to me. I know there's a lot of emails floating around saying it's virtual reality, it's special effects, it's edited, it's this, it's that. For the portion I watched, I didn't see any of that. But again, with the caveat, I haven't watched the whole thing yet. Meanwhile, the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, is calling for a G20-wide crackdown on all social media because it's just out of control, these people talking to each other. This unrestricted flow of information, it's making it impossible for us to manipulate our populations. Yeah, that was kind of the whole point here. But again, the actions of New Zealand and now Australia It's obvious they've got something to hide. There are so many violent videos on the net. There's all the drone strike videos where people are being killed, blown into bloody bits. There's, war footage, all that stuff. Nobody complains about that. But possession of the New Zealand mosque shooting video can now get you 10 years in prison in New Zealand. Fortunately, they don't have jurisdiction up here, at least yet. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're going to go ahead and take a phone call from Joe in California. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. First, how's your left arm feeling?
It's better. Another day or two, I should be ready to, wrestle whatever we have on the
Maybe you better give up boxing. Maybe you better give up boxing.
Well, actually, I've kind of outgrown all that stuff. I mean, when I was a kid, I was into martial arts and swords and everything. But, Yeah, I'm having to accept the fact that I'm aging, not very gracefully, but I am aging, and I refuse
Mike,
to.
I have a
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a comment before. I want to ask a question on New Zealand. But first, in light of Representative Omar's comment, this whole brouhaha over Zionist influence, AIPAC money,
Yes.
it seems, based on her courage, which we haven't seen from Christians and Jews who are serving in our government, perhaps we need more Muslims in our government in order to regain our sovereignty and stop being a puppet state.
I'm not so sure that specifically it's Muslims, but if you look at her background, what she went through growing up in a war zone, okay, this is somebody who has a very hardened opinion about wars, and I think more than being offensive to AIPAC, I think that Ilhan Omar, like Tulsi Gabbard, is being targeted for being anti-war. And it isn't just that they're anti-war and would vote against the war. They could quickly become the focus of a sudden surge of anti-war sentiment here in the American people, which is long overdue, guys. I got to tell you, it's long overdue.
But it's good to see. I mean, it's a sad commentary on our political system that it takes a Somali woman, a Muslim Somali woman, come out with these statements, and perhaps she's not so easily corruptible as the rest of the political class.
I would definitely agree on that one. Her statements seem to be coming out of her life experience, not a desire to inflate her wallet.
Right, Mike, on New Zealand, I want to make a comment, but first, a question. Do you have a theory or hypothesis at all that you haven't yet announced on the program?
Well, there are theories all over the place here, but to me, this feels like a stage setup, like the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas, like Sandy Hook. It's just a staged event with lots of dead bodies to push the gun grabber agenda. And one of the things I did notice when I watched part of that video that other people had talked about, the guy doing the shooting appears to have no emotional connection to it whatsoever, which means, experienced military. Then you see him mishandle the weapon. And so I'm back to my first question. What kind of medications was this guy on?
Right. I did a little research, and I'm not saying there's a similarity between what happened here and what happened in Norway with Breivik. Although I think it's interesting that Breivik, he was declared as being the media said that he was a neo-Nazi, and actually he was a liberal, pro-homosexual, and pro-Israel.
Yes.
But this individual, this guy from Australia, he had visited Turkey on 2 occasions, North Korea, Pakistan. At least this is what I've seen on the internet, and Israel. And if you look at New Zealand, like I said, I did a little research. New Zealand was one of the 3 countries in 2016 that sponsored the resolution in the UN Security Council that condemned Israeli settlement building in the occupied territories.
Yes.
This was the vote that Obama's ambassador abstained, where Obama got a lot of heat from the Zionist lobby and from the rest of the political class. And also, New Zealand's been pretty much on board on this BDS movement. So I'm not saying there was a Zionist connection, but it is interesting that you have these facts out there that they sponsored this resolution and they were at least agreeable to this BDS movement.
Well, it's entirely possible. I mean, New Zealand is a hotbed of Mossad activity for that part of the world. In fact, some of Israel's assassins have been accused by New Zealand of stealing New Zealand passports in order to travel around the world without being traced. So there's a little bit of animosity definitely going on between them.
Right, and that was actually confirmed. I think there was an earthquake in that same city in a few years back, and they said that some Israelis, one was apprehended, the others escaped. They basically were there to steal passports, to steal identities for foreign operations. But Netanyahu did say when New Zealand did sponsor that resolution, he said this was a declaration of war. And the Zionists don't take it very well when you declare war on them or you challenge their power. So who knows? I just wanted to put that out there.
Well, it's entirely possible, but don't forget this isn't the first time there's been a questionable shooting that supported the gun grabber agenda. There was the Port Arthur massacre, and there are still lingering doubts that was the real deal as well. Joe,
thank you, Mike.
All right, we got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials. Got another caller waiting, and we will be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Withoout the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened? What's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we are going to go back to the phones to Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I always thought that the media, although they're a bunch of demonic Illuminati, deep state bastards. I thought they had some sense. But this whole thing of trying to stigmatize Donald Trump, calling him a white nationalist, it's, first of all, it's not stigmatizing him. It's actually unstigmatizing white nationalism, which is a good thing, because I consider myself a white nationalist. So I'm overjoyed. I mean, we all know how they tried to they demonize Trump all the time with everything. And so what they're doing by they're giving white nationalism the greatest publicity and marketing that we ever could have. If you say you're a white nationalist now, people are like, oh, well, okay, Trump's a white nationalist and he's doing a good job, or he's not that dangerous. Or so I don't know if they've really thought this whole attack profile against Trump out, because, like I said, they're trying to stigmatize Trump. What they're really doing is unstigmatizing white nationalism, which, in my view, is a good thing. And once again, to have the president of the United States, who is supported by at least 40% of the population, being called and labeled a white nationalist, that's the best publicity we could ever get. I mean, you can't buy publicity like that. And you'd think that people in the media would understand publicity and advertising and marketing to realize what a disaster they're creating for their side, and what a godsend this is for white nationalism. So I'm really happy about it. The more they call him a white nationalist, the better, to destigmatize white nationalism, because there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, nationalism is a great.
That's exactly
the
point. Because the first part of the brainwashing and the propaganda is to make you think that something is bad without explaining why. Oh, white nationalism is bad. Okay, well I'm white. Why is that any worse than somebody who's black, brown, red, peach, taupe, or mauve? And as far as being a nationalist, isn't that another word for patriotism? But the corporate media has been selling this idea, and the liberals have been selling this idea that white nationalism is bad. And, I mean, there's a double standard here, because when black people are proud of their heritage, it's called black power. When Hispanics are proud of their heritage, it's called, brown power. But when white people get together and are proud of their heritage, it's called racism.
Well, Mike, they call you names and they try to tint it with racism or Nazism or whatever as a way to shut you up, because they can't defend against your arguments. So once again, by normalizing it and destigmatizing white nationalism, it's going to create a debate, an open debate, where people aren't going to be scared to say, oh, well, wait a minute, I'm a nationalist, I'm a patriot, I'm a populist. And like I said, this is one of the beauties of the Trump presidency. I know some people don't like him, but you really his ability to take on these politically correct, idols and to say, okay, screw you, is really gonna, and it has been, working on the morale of everybody else to speak out and say, well, yeah, I am a nationalist and I'm white and I'm proud of being white. Nothing wrong with that. And the other thing real quick, I have a theory that that Trump, when he's not president anymore, he's going to get himself a TV network and a media empire. And I think maybe that's why he's not defending the, you see, like, for instance, Fox. Fox is starting to hire all these lefties, and they're putting a lot of pressure on there. I think Trump is going to get together and try to form a new Fox, like a populist Fox, a Trump network, whether he loses this time or in 6 years. I think that's in the cards, because Fox is definitely they're basically shedding and harassing their conservatives and their populists. And we're going to need a network. And Trump, being a money man, is probably saying, boy, whoever gets that network is going to be able to print money, because the people are with populism and nationalism, and the media, they don't care about ratings, they just want to control the message. So anybody that'll feed that audience and market to people like us is going to make a lot of money. And I think that might be one of the reasons why Trump is kind of, I think he might be planning on doing that.
Well, if he is, I'm certainly going to send him a resume. But my concern here in looking at current events, there are a lot of parallels between what we're going through right now in the United States and what Germany was going through just before the Nazis rise to power. And we're seeing the same tolerance for bizarre lifestyles, fragmentation of society, inflationary pressures, not as bad here as they were in the Weimar Republic, but a lot of anger and discontent. And the thing I am most afraid of is we could see some kind of a demagogue stand up and grab the imagination, if you will, of the nation and really turn us down a dark path.
Well, it's like Kennedy said: if you make peaceful revolution impossible, you're going to make a violent revolution inevitable. And I look at this, and that's what's so scary when I watch, like, Zero Hedge. They're suppressing Zero Hedge. I love Zero Hedge. I mean, to see, like, the other side, not the Trump side, suppressing all these websites. They're the enemy. So, they're the ones that are out there using this fascist Nazi tactic of suppression and censorship. So that's where the enemy is, in my view. And if there is a reaction and it does get to be like a Nazi Germany, they're going to be the ones to blame for this. I mean, it's not the Ron Paul constitutionalist white nationalists that are the abusive ones and destroying our constitutional republic. It's the lefties, the deep staties, the neocons. They're the ones that'll have this blood, or so to say, on their hands when the country falls apart. Because they're not allowing.
They will. And again, taking this country apart, maybe sort of, or taking it down, may be the first step toward building it back up in a completely different model. Again, something that would truly, truly be ugly. All right, well, listen, Joe, we're going to let you go, and the phone lines are open again. And apparently, it's not just New Zealand who is blocking all these websites like Zero Hedge. Apparently, it's Australia as well. Because I guess a lot of people in Australia know a lot of people in New Zealand. They talk on the phone a lot. And again, from their actions, you know that they don't want people looking at that video and analyzing it for themselves. Okay, let's go back to the phones here. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Nationalism and populism doesn't give you the right to have exceptionalism, right?
Yes.
We're not, you know what I mean? We're not, that's the problem. Like, you think you're better than somebody else, and you export that kind of like that value mentality to the rest of the world. No matter if you kill the people's population or not, you're bringing this attitude to them. That's the problem. I mean, Mike, it used to be, like what Trump said, make America great again, but I don't see it. I voted for the guy. I see make America being exceptional again. I mean, it's sad. That's what I see by him putting Bolton, Pompeo, and Elliott Abrams in. That's what these people believe in. They believe in a certain way, like what happened with the French defense. That saying should go down for the year, Mike, for like the best saying. Article 5 don't mean Article F-35. It's this whole attitude, that we're better than everybody else. Buy our weapons, by the way. I mean, it's to the point where it's actually discouraging them from buying our stuff anymore, or doing economic deals with us anymore.
Well,
because,
in terms of the weapons, U.S.-made weapons are overpriced, and they're poor performers. I'm looking at that story about the Independence class and Freedom class littoral combat ships. They perform so poorly, the projects are just going to scrap. They're not going to go on to manufacture them and deploy them. They're going to go back to the drawing board and start all over. Too much whiz-bang. And apparently one of the biggest problems they had with these ships, besides the drivetrain, was there was this modular weapons system where there are all these sockets all over the ship where they could very quickly change what went in there in order to quickly reconfigure the ship for different missions. And it sounds good, you know, it looks good on paper. Getting it to actually work in the actual ocean environment proved to be very difficult. I actually saw this documentary about the sea trials for one of these ships. And of course, it was supposed to be positive and puff, and we're doing all these wonderful things. But they couldn't hide the fact that the last day of the sea trials, they were tied up to the dock because they couldn't move. But they just cleared out the water off to one side and fired the gun out there to say, see, we're proving it all works. I'm surprised the Zumwalt is out on operational deployment, given its history of drivetrain problems. And I just hope they haven't sent it out there prematurely, because that could cost some of our young people their lives. But again, it's all driven by the money. It's driven by the profit. It's driven by the contract. You know, this weapon is supposed to be ready to go now. Hence, it is ready to go now. This almost reminds me of the scandal over the M16, which, for those of you who remember the Vietnam War, there was this contest between two different rifles, and one was the M14 and the other was the M16, which was being produced then by Armalite. And clearly the M16 was the superior weapon, but there were officers at the Pentagon who were basically linked up economically with the company producing the M14. And the official justification for the M14 was that it used exactly the same ammunition as the M30 machine gun, making logistics simpler. Okay, that was the official explanation. But the M16 was put out for field tests in Vietnam, and a lot of kids got killed. And they were found with the gun dismantled, trying, you know, with their cleaning kit out. And Congress investigated and discovered that when the Pentagon had put the M16 out into tests in Vietnam, they had deliberately put the wrong propellant in those 223 cartridges. They put in a propellant they know would foul and jam the gun, and that's exactly what happened. And it was a huge, huge stink and a scandal. And Congress basically told the Pentagon, you will go with the M16 and you will use the correct ammunition. And of course, the M16 has turned into one of the world's most popular weapons, and it's, you know, its little brother, its baby brother, the AR-15, is a wonderful weapon, especially with that ability to, you know, to quickly reconfigure it for like target shooting or varminting the garden or something.
Don't forget the F-16 with General Dynamics with the wire shaping problem where they blamed the pilot. Remember that? That movie was
yes,
based
that
on
was
that.
a horrible
Yeah.
one. And there was a big lawsuit by the widow of one of the pilots who got killed, and somebody leaked an internal document that admitted to the fact that under high G's, the wiring harness was chafing against the interior frame and it was being covered up. There's a lot of that that goes on. It's just driven by so much money. And I mean, there have been all kinds of boondoggles, and I can understand why other countries don't want the F-35. Some have already been coerced into buying it through politics, through arm twisting, who knows, through kickbacks. But it's not a well-performing weapon, and I think that's the reason why Israel has stayed out of Syria since the S-400s went online. Because all it's going to take is for one F-35 to get shot down in combat, and Lockheed is basically in big, big trouble.
Mike, going back to like Trump, I'd love to see Make America's factories work again, because they're not. Detroit is still rotted.
Yes.
Flint, Michigan. I mean, there's nothing. I know your last caller. He's right. I mean, like I said, I voted for. Nothing's being like done per se. You know what I mean? Like we're in stagnation, basically.
We're in a wartime economy. We're in a wartime economy. Every bit of wealth the government gets its hands on is going to the war machine or to entitlement programs to keep people in their place, not to mention Israel. But there's no money for infrastructure. There's no money for rebuilding. And back when Trump started this tariff war, I said the big problem was that America's factories and farms were not positioned to take advantage of the protectionism. And we'd still have to go on importing things from China, and we'd have to pay that uplift on the tariff, which comes out of your pocket, not the government's. And they're not thinking these things through. And I'm looking at this scandal about how people are, the children of rich kids are literally bribed into these prestigious universities, and they hire people to do their homework and their term papers, and they come out with no education at all. And I'm wondering, is this the reason why we see such poor quality thinking coming out of Washington, D.C.? Or is it something in the water? Or are they all on prescription antidepressants?
Well, you know what's sad, Mike? If I still got time, that woman from France, this French secretary, she even said it. It's all a weapons industry. I mean, nothing about construction. Hey, why don't we have construction going to the U.S.? France will build this in the U.S. The U.S. will build something in France. None of that.
Nope.
It's it's just all about weaponry. It's a welfare warfare. The West is a welfare and warfare now. That's what it seems.
It really is. Remember that story that we ran yesterday? The Oroville Dam, $1.1 billion to repair it, and it's already falling apart again.
There you go. That's the future, like Detroit. Have a good show, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. We got another caller waiting on the line, but I'm going to wait until after the commercial break here. One of the things the corporate media keeps going on about is how nobody has ever shot Muslims inside a mosque before. That's not true. Back in 1994, there was an attack at the Ibrahimi Mosque when Baruch Goldstein, who was a Messianic Jewish settler, gunned down 29 Muslims while they prayed. Got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
How healthy are your arteries? Deteriorating circulation has a number of early warning signs. High cholesterol, high blood pressure, fingers and or toes often go cold, arms and or legs often go to sleep, sharp diagonal crease in the earlobe, short walks cause cramping or pains in legs. Memory is not as good as it used to be, ankles swell late in the day. chest pain after physical exercise or emotional stress. If you experience even one of these symptoms, your circulatory system is crying out for attention. Extendivite is a natural solution to help improve your overall health. Extendivite is not your average heart tonic. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves
and aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go back to the phones to Art off the grid. Aloha, Art. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I missed the first half hour there, so I don't know if you covered this little conversation between Joe Scarborough and Andrew Yang on the Morning Joe.
No, not yet.
Somebody shared an article with me, and I just found it like. First, I want to share part of the dialogue, and then I want to throw a question at you. Yang says he wants to provide every American with $1,000 a month. Scarborough says, I applaud that. What's the price tag? You're a numbers guy. What's the price tag of giving every American $1,000 a month? Yang, well, we're spending $1.5 trillion to Americans around the country, but you have to look around us. Who are going to be the big winners from AI and new technologies? The big winners are going to be Amazon, Google, Facebook, Uber, and organizations and companies like that. So Scarborough says, yeah, but I'm curious, how are you going to pay for it? Yang says what he wants to do is, because he brought up how Amazon paid zero in taxes last year. So he says, while Amazon's sucking up $20 billion in business every year, putting 30% of American malls out of business, so what we need to do is pass a value-added tax that would get the American people a slice of every Amazon transaction, every Google search, and every robot truck mile. Boy, here's my question. If you slap a value-added tax on Amazon and whoever, do they not think that prices will increase to cover that tax?
Of course
Why
they
not
will.
just have Amazon? Why not just have Amazon pay a damn income tax and be done with it?
Well, either along with that, pay a decent working wage. I mean, the problem here is, Yang he's addressing a real issue, which is that Americans don't really have enough money to power a consumer economy. But unfortunately, the corporations, the manufacturers, the retailers, they don't want to pay decent wages and salaries. They're struggling to keep all the money that they can and stay out of bankruptcy. Part of it is taxes overall are already too high. The GOP tax plan from last year, as so many people are finding out now in tax season, it definitely favored the top corporations and the ultra-rich, but ordinary middle-class Americans, they're seeing their tax bill go up. And there's going to come a point where people are being taxed so much, the economy is going to start breaking down. But all of this money is being taxed away from us to pay for all of these wars in all these countries.
Right. And my argument is pretty simple. I mean, Amazon paid zero in taxes last year. How are you going to take in $20 billion in business profits and not pay taxes? What would happen to you or me or anybody listening right now if we made $20 billion and we didn't pay any taxes?
That's a really, really good question. And I don't know how Amazon does it. Anyway, Art, we got to let you go. We got to take a break for station identification, and we will be right back with another phone call.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a phone call from Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha, Tony. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I just want to make aloha, Mike. I just want to make a couple of quick comments. First one is I didn't know Tulsi Gabbard was Hindu and would that help her political career as far as running for president. And the second one is when Brazil joins NATO, will it finally reach the goal of being a superpower?
Yeah, well, not everybody who's in NATO is considered a superpower. I mean, certainly it would help Brazil's prestige. Hello?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. And apparently, this thing about Tulsi Gabbard, she practiced Hinduism in her youth. I don't know what she is right now. I'll have to look into that. And it doesn't really matter anyway. She's anti-war, and she's got the courage of her convictions. I don't agree with everything that she says. You know, she thinks the Second Amendment should go away. I disagree with that. All right, finishing up here with what happened down in Christchurch. Everybody's saying, what's going on? What was behind all of this? Well, the gun grabbers are definitely having a good day. Both the New Zealand and the Australian government are using this as a justification to start clamping down on an open, free internet so that we can't talk to each other anymore. They want to put the blinders back on us. You know, it's almost like the movie Tommy. Cork in the mouth, earplugs in the ears, and just little blinders so that we only look at the corporate media here. And there's an interesting little article, this came out of Fort Russ, saying there may be a larger plan with all of these shootings going on, because there have also been shootings of Christians. And by the way, I got an email from somebody saying that about 2 years ago there was a mosque shooting up in Quebec. What if there is a plan to trigger a war between the Muslim and Christian world? And I know it sounds like the plot of a really cheap movie, but if you think how devastating that would be, because already all across Europe and the United States, the Muslims and the Christians are already blended together. They wouldn't have to travel very far to attack each other. So there's a scary prospect on that. Okay. So once again, we're seeing all these stories. Christians get killed. The media ignores it. It's the wrong kind of people. All right, let's take another phone call. Jim in Chicago, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, Michael. This morning I was reading an article, and it was talking about the farmers that live in the Midwest, and due to the heavy rains, a lot more farmers are going to be going under, filing for bankruptcy. And they were saying, not only are we angry about the tariffs and now about the rain. They don't know what they're going to do, but yet and still, they still support Donald Trump, which I don't understand.
Well, you know, the weather's the weather. When you're a farmer, you tend to be pretty fatalistic about what's coming down out of the sky because there isn't anything that you can do about it. But there is no doubt that the needed infrastructure for flood control has deteriorated. But that's not Donald Trump's fault. He's only had the job for 2 years, and he can't even get that immigration fence up and running. So, yeah, that's something everybody needs to be paying attention to right now. The U.S. agricultural sector is being hard hit by all this flooding, and farmers, ranchers are having to get their livestock to high ground. So it's going to be the food market's going to be tight this summer, is what it comes down to.
Not only that, which means prices are going to be higher.
Yes.
Because I can recall when they had the drought in California, any kind of fruit and vegetables that I got from California, it almost doubled.
Yes.
So you know what to expect this summer. But again, Michael, I will let you go. You take care.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. It would be nice if the U.S. government, over the past several years, past couple of decades, had been rebuilding our infrastructure, the levees, the dams, flood control. But everybody was all caught up in this idea of, oh, there's global warming. Snow is a thing of the past. We don't have to worry about it. We don't have to get the road grit. We don't have to get the bulldozers fixed up. And we certainly don't have to worry about spring flooding anymore because snowfalls are a thing of the past. And they were just caught up in that whole fantasy in order to extract money and obedience from us. And they weren't paying attention to what was really going on. All of the agencies that should have been sounding the alarm about a heavy snowpack means heavy flood season, they were either being ignored or they were just going along with, well, it's all the fault of, you know, climate disruption, and you've got to buy carbon credits and pay carbon taxes. But the reports are from along that Mississippi drainage basin, levees are already being overtopped. And so there is massive flooding. I saw a sort of before and after satellite image for part of Nebraska. It's bad. It is very, very bad. Okay, we're going to do another shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Getting on back to the international news, Israeli Apartheid Week opens worldwide. And this is the 15th annual Israeli Apartheid Week. This is the largest global boycott, divestment, and sanctions mobilization for Palestinian rights. It opens today with more than 80 events in 40 cities across Europe, North America, and Palestine, featuring protests, lectures, film screenings, cultural events. And the Israeli Apartheid Week is expected to be held in more than 200 cities worldwide. Meanwhile, of course, Netanyahu is still out there saying that Israel is not for all of its citizens, but according to their new basic law, Israel is a state for the Jewish people only. So all you Palestinians, get out of here. And by the way, I've seen that canard come back into the media about there never was a Palestine. There was no such thing. And yeah, there was. You go back and you look at those ancient maps and you'll see Palestine. You won't see an Israel. You'll see a Palestine. The United Nations rights expert Michael Link is saying that Israel continues with settlement expansion in the West Bank and is depriving Palestinians of clean water. Israel is blocking the access of Palestinians to clean water on a regular, while stripping their land of minerals. They're basically pillaging. And again, that land belongs to the Palestinians. It does not belong to Israel. And yet the Israeli settlers just walk on there and say, "Oh, this looks pretty. I think I'll take it home." The United Nations experts are urging Israel to rein in their security forces as a follow-up to that UN report on how all of these unarmed protesters were killed. good luck on that one. The Council on American Islamic Relations and the American Muslims for Palestine are calling on U.S. congressional representatives to take action against Israel for the March 12th assault of 2 American sisters at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in occupied East Jerusalem. We talked about this. Basically, they were there just playing tourist, and they sort of got caught in the middle of an altercation, and the Israeli soldiers just grabbed them, threw them on the ground, and these Americans were saying, we're Americans, we've got a passport, we've got a passport. And apparently the Israelis said, we don't care what you've got, and just roughed them up. It was a violent assault. So that Israeli commentator was right. They do come back from the occupation as animals. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Michael in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. I'm going to follow up on a New Zealand incident, but just following up on your recent statements there pertaining to that. You know, friends like that with our allies over there in Israel, boy, friends like that, who needs enemies, huh?
Yes.
Regarding New Zealand incident, all we have to do, like everything else, is just step back, wait for all the facts to come in, because initially we don't get the whole story, the real truth behind the event. But in addition, always question who benefits the most from that event. So based on what you just said, too, that some Christian shooting just occurred somewhere, here we can see somebody, I wonder who it is, probably it's all fitting into that agenda clearly, and everybody's got to remain aware of this and not take the bait. And if it's ever coming around, don't take the bait. And just always realize the real enemy are traitors in Washington, D.C. and your state capitals. I mean, if 9/11 was caused by radical Muslims, and then within 20 years they start flooding our country and Europe with radical Muslims, who's the real enemy? Those actually bringing them in more than the people themselves, even though they're a threat too, because they're here to take us over. That's what they're told, just like south of the border. They're told when they're coming in, we stole their land, and they're here to take it back. So that's all a fact. But the ultimate enemy are those bringing them in that are serving in our government but betraying the American people and dishonoring all the vets that fought in all the world wars, supposedly to keep us free from such tyranny ever coming here or in Europe or in Asia and everywhere else we fought to supposedly stop such tyranny from coming in.
Well, you're absolutely right. And again, this country is just changing so rapidly, or rather the government is changing so rapidly. And it does appear like this is a time of chaos. And as I was saying earlier, I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what we're going through now here in the United States and the societal conditions in Germany just before the rise of the Nazis. And I certainly would not want to see the Fourth Reich take root here, but the conditions are definitely conducive.
Absolutely. No question. That's spot on. And the final warning to all Americans is no matter what happens from here on out, do not give up your guns. They cannot totally destroy us, annihilate us, or take us over as long as we can defend ourselves from those despots that want to have a dictatorship here. They have to take all our guns and ammo. And it's our duty as Americans to never relinquish that freedom, that right, along with the rest of them. And if we manage to maintain that freedom, they will continue to have a real hard time rolling us over like they've done the rest of the world.
Well, the difference today is, previous revolutions were fought with muskets and rifles. Today's revolution is being fought with keyboards. And we need to keep the focus on that, because all of this social media censorship, that's the first salvo. They're coming after our freedom of speech. And if we're not able to communicate with each other, it almost doesn't matter if we have guns or not. And as social media continues to try and block what we can see and what we can say, we need to come up with other means of communication. Something that is peer-to-peer, something that is not centralized, going back to the original idea of the ARPANET, a network that could lose a third of its mass and still continue to work. That was the original design concept. And
that's key.
You know, Google and Facebook and Twitter were designed to basically corral everybody into a single controllable access point. And we're seeing the results of that now.
Absolutely, that is key. Communication network is essential as well. And last, all Americans must do their duty and raise their children with the proper education that makes them understand the real history of this country from its founding, what makes us different from all the other nations in the world. And that's why they're trying to destroy that, raising these new kids, these new generations through the new government school system, totally controlled by the government, the public schools, turning out, rather than intelligent, educated kids, they're just turning out socially engineered, mush for brains type of kids that don't know anything about anything. So parents, you've got to do your job. Raise your kids right and have control over your local schools to make sure you're getting your money's worth from those schools as you send your kids through them, that they're coming out razor sharp with real education, history, sciences, everything else, and fill in the gaps of what they're not learning at those schools.
Well, you know, unfortunately, local control of school curriculum has been a hot button issue going all the way back to the 1960s. And most people don't remember this, but when the Black Panthers first formed, they were not a militant group. They didn't carry guns. And they agitated, first of all, they wanted it into the war in Vietnam because blacks were being preferentially sent to the front lines. They wanted a guaranteed breakfast for school kids in the ghettos so that they could, you know, go to school with the fuel in their brain to learn. And they wanted local control of the school curriculum. And the federal government has just been adamant that the central federal government controls the curriculum for all schools all across America. And it's been a source of contention for a lot of areas because in the agricultural parts of our countries, the curriculum should focus on agriculture. And if you're like down there by the Kennedy Space Center, probably a curriculum more aligned with aeronautics and aerodynamics and engineering. But it really should be up to the community to assess what is that community's needs for its economic future and to adjust the education system accordingly. But from the federal government's point of view, the education system is no longer about education. It's about indoctrination. And you're right. It's producing a generation of obedient workers who, to be very honest, aren't even that good at being workers, which is why we're being flooded with these H-1B visas from other countries who actually have an education and can come in and do the high-tech jobs our kids cannot.
Yep, that's right, Mike. And that's why, like you said, the schools have to be returned back to local control. Heck, I mean, we're paying exorbitant local school taxes, so that control should be localized and not federalized. So these are all the highlights, the main points everybody needs to understand and to make sure that they pursue so that we can delay this global takeover that's going on everywhere else around the planet, and we can delay, postpone it, or even prevent it from actually destroying our constitutional republic. Because that's exactly how they're doing it, from those angles. Like
well,
they have everywhere
unfortunately, our constitutional republic is already on life support, and
no question.
You know, and it's one thing to see the liberals who want to completely remake the government into something that serves them. I mean, they want to add more seats to the Supreme Court so they can load them up with liberals. They're working to bypass the Electoral College. They just want to change the system so it works for them. But we're starting to see more and more people in the GOP who are going along with this attitude of Constitution, schmonstitution. You know, let's just, you know, get our wars and get our money.
That's right. That's right. The laws don't apply to them, only to us. And they don't. You always hear them cite the Constitution. Trump can't do that because of the Constitution. But anytime they break the constitutional laws, then you know, how dare you accuse us of that? That's nonsense. Oh, it's passé. It doesn't matter anymore. That's antiquated. So it's amazing how they constantly are showing these contradictions to us. But the bottom line is, you're right. We're at the edge of a cliff. We've been there for decades now. And
yes.
the constitutional republic can only survive if the Americans manage to somehow get our government back in control and restore the original constitutional republic with the original laws of the Constitution. All those laws would
We're not going to
correct
get it back
everything
there.
quickly.
We're not going to get it back there. We're going to have to let this system collapse, or worse, lose a war, and then rebuild from scratch. Again, back to the Constitution and the first 13 amendments. We're going to be right back after the... Thank you for the phone call, Michael. We'll be right back after these few words.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Ann, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to Dan in Illinois. Aloha, Dan. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? I was wondering if you've seen where the Connecticut Supreme Court gave the green light for the Sandy Hook victims to sue the gun manufacturers.
Yes, I saw that. And so that means that everybody who's been the victim of a burglary can sue the crowbar manufacturers. And everybody who has become overweight can sue the silverware manufacturers.
Yeah. You know what my solution is?
What is it?
I got a Ruger here. 357 that was made in Connecticut. I say, take your manufacturing out. So many of the guns are manufactured in the Northeast.
Yes.
take your manufacturing, take it to a friendly state. Same with the gunmetal manufacturers. Just leave the state. Don't sell a single gun in that state or ammo to police, anybody. They're going to have that attitude. Just cut them off completely.
Well, I think that would be a really good situation, but as I understand this lawsuit, the Sandy Hook families are going to be able to sue the gun makers everywhere in the country. And again, it's utterly ridiculous. It's another attack on our right to keep and bear arms. For example, another example, somebody takes a car, and because they're off their meds or they took too many of their meds, they snap and they deliberately, intentionally drive up on a sidewalk and run down and kill a bunch of people. Should the victims have the right to sue the car manufacturer?
Yeah, exactly. Or should they be able to sue the city for not having the curbs high enough to keep a car from running up onto the sidewalk?
Yeah, it could just get ridiculous. But again, notice they're targeting the gun manufacturers. There's definitely an anti-gun agenda at work here. The New World Order cannot come into existence if the population is still armed.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I say so many of the guns are manufactured on the East Coast. If you look at them, if you own one, like I said, my 357 was I think it's Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Yes.
Ruger. So I know a couple different ones have moved out of that area to friendlier areas, but it's they opened up a can of worms that's really going to screw a lot of people over.
I imagine so. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was one gun maker who had been in Connecticut, and they did relocate to another state. And there were all those lost jobs and lost revenue.
Yeah, I think they moved to Alabama, if I remember correctly, but I can't remember
Was
which
it Remington?
One. Well, this is who they're going to go after, Remington, because that was the brand gun.
Yeah.
But get this, the guy that did the shooting, he killed his mother with a different gun, a different make of gun.
Yeah.
Other than the Remington, and both of those guns were hers. I mean,
that's right. I remember that. She was the legal owner of those firearms.
Yeah, and he killed her with one, and he took I think it was the AR, and he did what he did.
If, in fact, he actually did what he did. There's reason to suspect that the whole thing was another hoax. And they're just perpetuating the hoax, and they're just exploiting it and saying, yes, we have aggrieved parents here. We're going to sue the gun makers. We're going to sue Wolfgang Halbig. How dare he punch holes in our little fantasy world?
Yeah. Well, that brings up another thing about the shooting in New Zealand. I seen a video this morning of the guy going down the hall shooting, and the casings weren't hitting the floor. They were like coming. You could see them come out of the gun, but you could not see them bouncing on the floor or off the wall.
Well, don't forget on the AR, I mean, they basically exit to the right at a high rate of speed, and that's done intentionally so that they stay out of the way of the shooter, so he's not going to trip on them or anything. So I don't find that a compelling argument. Somebody sent me a video claiming an excerpt claiming that the shell casings were simply vanishing in midair. Well, that was just the shutter on the camera. And we need to be really, really careful. There's a lot of totally junk nonsense about the New Zealand shooting being poured onto the web to try and keep us all confused and keep us all arguing with each other, and to just keep the issue muddied. But I'm a great believer in Occam's razor. And as I said, I haven't watched the full video yet, but what I did watch of it, it looks sadly like it's the real deal. This is somebody who had absolutely no compunction to pull the trigger, and he was pulling the trigger on these people, and either he had a past military background we are unaware of, or he was on some kind of serious medication. The fact that he mishandled his guns, for example, suggests that it was more likely the medication than past military. Anyway, Dan, we got to let you go. We got to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Okay. All right.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds, up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Well, they're stealing down on Wall Street and in Washington, too. You know, it makes me wonder, what's a guy on Main Street to do? I've always tried to be an honest, upstanding kind of guy. But I must admit lately, I thought about giving something else a try. Oh, I want to be a pirate. I want to sail the 7 seas, yeah, I want to be a pirate.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Let's get back to the international news here. Apparently, over in Germany, there was this BDS event that was scheduled, and part of the event was this Rasmia Oda was scheduled to speak. And Germany, at the request of Israel, has now revoked her visa, kicked her out of the country, and canceled the event. Now, over in Jordan, lawmakers are seeking to expel the Israeli ambassador from the kingdom in response to the ongoing Israeli aggressions at holy sites in Jerusalem, by which they mean the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now, Amman is the official custodian of Jerusalem's holy Muslim sites, and the parliamentary session followed an Israeli court ruling on the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. So the parliament recommended the government recall the Jordanian ambassador from Israel and expel the Israeli ambassador from Amman to confront the ongoing Israeli aggression at the holy sites. Israel's provocations are here. Over in Gaza, unemployment and poverty rates have hit a record high, and the United Nations is now saying unless current trends are changed, the Gaza Strip will be unlivable by 2020. That's literally how close they are. Meanwhile, latest number of illegal Jewish settlers who live in the occupied West Bank reached 449,805 in January of this year, distributed among 7 illegal settlement blocks along the occupied West Bank. Now, these settlements are illegal under international law, but Israel continues with the policy with the backing of the United States. Partners in crime, I guess, here. Friction is building between Israel and Turkey. Turkish President Erdogan has slammed Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his son for verbally attacking Turkey. So on Saturday, Erdogan called on Netanyahu to twist the ear of his son, Yair, as punishment for calling Istanbul Constantinople, warning that he had other ways to educate Israel if Netanyahu or his son continued with their rhetoric. Israel has a bad habit of renaming other people's places to serve their political narrative. For example, Israel doesn't call the West Bank the West Bank. They call it Judea and Samaria. And apparently, this was all started by a tweet by Yair in which he said, I will remind him, meaning Erdogan, that Istanbul is actually a city called Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire and center of Orthodox Christianity for more than 1,000 years before the Turkish occupation. Well, you know, cities do change their names. And it's kind of ironic, and Erdogan should have pointed this out, that Yair seems rather critical of Turkey's occupation of Constantinople while perfectly comfortable with Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip and Judea and Samaria. Over in Poland, the dust still has not settled from Netanyahu's claim that the Poles cooperated with the Nazis to kill Jews in the Holocaust, and basically Netanyahu tried to backtrack a little bit, saying that the prime minister spoke of Poles and not the Polish people or the country of Poland. This was misquoted and misrepresented. But the spat escalated when days later Israel's interim foreign minister claimed that Poles imbibe anti-Semitism with their mother's milk. So the Polish president is now out there saying it is up to Israel to make the first move toward any possible reconciliation. I wouldn't hold your breath. Okay, over in Korea, a statement has been issued by Seoul's presidential Blue House on Monday that said the time is now right for the two Koreas to hold further talks, building upon President Moon Jae-in's policy of rapprochement, which saw him meet Kim 3 times last year. And the statement said, we are in a deep agony over how to take advantage of this baton that's been handed to us. We agree with the view that no deal is better than a bad deal. However, in reality, it is difficult to achieve complete denuclearization at one stroke. I think we need to consider the so-called all-or-nothing strategy. Well, Moon Jae-in is definitely on the right track here, and I still think that the back-channel discussions are leading toward reunification, which would really annoy Washington, D.C. So, by the way, the Blue House in South Korea, did you know that what we call the White House now was originally blue, pale blue? with white trim, kind of looked like Wedgwood china. But following the War of 1812 and the White House getting burned, it was just given a whitewash coating, which has remained to this day. And by the way, if you visit Washington, D.C. and you see the White House, you need to understand that's not the original White House. They've kept like one little tiny section of one corner of a wall that actually dates back to the time of John Adams. And everything else has just been replaced over and over and over again and tunneled under and dug under. Still, be a fun place to see. So much history in there. Okay, Joe Biden, everybody's saying, will Joe run? Will Joe run? And apparently over the weekend, he was addressing 1,000 Democrats in Delaware. And the former vice president told his audience that his record was the most progressive, quote, of anyone running for the United. And then he corrected himself, backed off, saying anybody who would run. So everybody basically took that to mean that Biden basically telegraphed that he is going to step into the race. He's leading in the polls already. He's leading in the polls. And I'm sure that Hillary Clinton, if she's serious about stepping back in, is probably going to get on the call and say, don't you do that. Don't you do that, Joe. And by the way, I'm already aware of all the candidates who have declared so far. We're seeing the politics of personal destruction uncork against them all. We've seen this pattern before. And I do think that Hillary is going to step back on in and try and steal the election one more time. Over at the Department of Justice, Attorney General William Barr is supposedly trying to restore confidence in the Justice Department. Good luck on that one. And basically, Barr has been in office for a month. He's been in a lot of briefings. And his message to the staff of the Department of Justice is it's kind of a low-key administration here. Believe it or not, there was this tradition called a clap-in, where a newly confirmed Attorney General literally walks through the building and the subordinates all applaud, you know, like trained seals at the circus. And Barr said, we're not going to do that. And he basically held a 3-hour coffee reception in his conference room. Well, it looks all very well for him being a good manager of his people. But in terms of rebuilding the trust of the American people in the Department of Justice, that is not going to happen until we see some indictments and prosecutions happening under Title 18 as one small example. Now, over in the world of the campaigns, Alexandria occasionally has a Cortex. Her poll numbers are sinking fast. And this article was written basically in Investment Watch blog, and it said, I love occasional cornflakes. She's the prime example why you should never send your children to indoctrination centers, government schools, colleges. She's imploding the rotten DNC from the inside and exposing who they really are. And yes, she is. I think she was chosen and encouraged because she's very attractive, she's energetic, she's personable, she presents well, and that's where it stops. Because when you listen to her policies, it is clear they are not thought out. For one thing, we found out the Green New Deal was actually copied from a United Nations program from back in 2009. And she doesn't know how she's going to make any of this stuff work or pay for it, but it sounds good, and that's the campaign. We're going to get up there, we're going to campaign on this. Doesn't mean we're actually going to do anything, because it can't be done. But we're going to get you all whipped up to believe that we can make this happy. Now, there's an interesting article that came out of Station Gossip, and it in turn is referencing Campus Reform's Cabot Phillips, who basically went onto the campus of Georgetown University to ask students who they believe is the new face of the Democratic Party, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And what was interesting is the college students, who are young themselves, overwhelmingly said Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the new face of the Democratic Party. Oddly enough, though, a lot of them said that's not the best that we can do. It's not a great idea. So they're concerned that Alexandria will take the party in a new direction, but it may be a direction that a lot of people aren't going to like. So we'll see what's happening there. Here's a good one. Representative Devin Nunes is suing Twitter, alleging shadow banning of conservatives and defamation by the users. Now, Nunes is seeking $250 million in compensatory damages and $350,000 in punitive damages in a lawsuit that assigns a significant amount of blame to Twitter for what it allows and does not allow on the site. Now, the liberals are going to come on back and they're going to say, well, Twitter is a private company. They have the freedom to do business with whoever they want or don't want. Mind you, these are the same people who go ballistic every time a baker refuses to make a gay wedding cake. Now, Nunes needs to focus on the defamation because as of right now, shadow banning, as objectionable as it is, may not actually be illegal. The question would be whether U.S. corporations are bound by the Bill of Rights or not, and they're going to say they aren't. Okay, George Conway, Kellyanne Conway's husband, is basically out there trying to sell the idea that Trump is mentally ill and his mental condition is deteriorating. Now, Kellyanne Conway is saying no, she doesn't share those concerns. Aiming for that 25th Amendment. He's a nut. We've got to remove him. We've got to remove him. Okay. You know, we are 2 years after the 2016 election, and Hillary's people still can't get over it. The Colorado governor just signed the law that promised to give the state's electoral votes to the national popular vote winner. They're trying to completely bypass the Electoral College because that's really where Hillary lost it. And there was massive election fraud in 2016. There was massive illegal immigrants voting. Over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is estimating almost 1 million illegal immigrants voted just in these last midterms. Our election system is an absolute joke. And I'm appalled that Donald Trump is not doing anything about it, because the people who tried to cheat him out of the White House in 2016, they're going to be back in 2020 working twice as hard. And they're going to have a lot more illegal immigrants, and now they're working to bypass the Electoral College and just make this a popular vote with rigged election machines and unaccountable illegal immigrants voting. It's a joke. This is not the way the United States is supposed to be run. Also from Judicial Watch, they are getting ready to challenge the new California law that legalizes ballot harvesting, saying that it is a recipe for fraud. For one thing, there's no chain of evidence. There's no chain of evidence that the ballot being put into the ballot box by the harvesters is the one that they got from the voter. Judicial Watch is also cleaning up 1.56 million inactive names from the voting rolls, all of which could be used to commit fraud. Our election system really is a joke. It's insane. Trump said he was going to fix it. He had an election integrity commission. Yes, they ran into roadblocks from the state commissions, but he should have pushed. This would have been a perfect time for those presidential brass knuckles to come on out. And for those of you concerned about election fraud, it is epidemic in this country. If you have not already seen it, there's an HBO documentary, Hacking Democracy, that you need to watch. It focuses on a lady named Bev Harris, who runs this amazing website called blackboxvoting.org that tells the story of how these electronic voting machines are designed and built to steal elections and hide it. And if you're interested in how the election system could be reformed, go over to my webpage, whatreallyhappened.com, and up in the upper left of the main page, right underneath that hopelessly outdated photo of yours truly, you'll see this little line, how to have honest elections. And since I wrote that article, I've had people in other countries email me saying, that's how we do it here. And it does keep the elections honest. So people are still pounding on Ilhan Omar. And apparently over at the National Review, Jonah Goldberg just went after Ilhan Omar for being an anti-Semite. She demonizes Jews with classic anti-Semitic claims about Jewish wealth and power. What he doesn't do is quote what Representative Omar actually said. He just makes up a bunch of stuff like the gist of Omar's complaints is that the perfidious, string-pulling Hebraic hordes control Congress with their shady shekels. Israel has hypnotized the world, and American Jews are guilty of dual loyalty. This is typical of the smears critics left and right heaped on Omar. But in reality, she didn't say anything anti-Jewish. She didn't mention Jews at all. She simply pointed out the obvious and very accurate fact that the Israel lobby spends large amounts of money supporting politicians who favor Israel and opposing politicians who don't. And as a result, she says, I am told every day that I am anti-American if I am not pro-Israel. I find that to be problematic, and I'm not alone. And no, Ilhan, you are not alone. I find it problematic as well. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll-free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
We will not go You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
Hey, and aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And as we reported last week, support for Israel among Americans, including American Jews, is at a 10-year low, according to the latest polls. And Israel is not able to get by on chutzpah anymore because people are outraged. And there's this article that's over in Middle East Eye talking about how Jewish American resistance to Israel is growing. It's bigger, it's louder, it is taking root on the college campuses despite the efforts of the pro-Israels to shut them down. We're starting to see the pendulum swing back the other way. No nation can do what Israel has been doing forever. At some point, all the lies break down and people see what's really going on and why. And again, they've used anti-Semites so much they've worn it out. They keep saying, oh, you just hate the Jews. No, we don't hate the Jews. That's like saying that the only reason people complain about the Nazis is they hate Germans. And that's absolutely not the issue. The issue is, as we've said before, the behavior of the individuals in the Israeli government. And we do have a right to criticize them, guaranteed by that First Amendment. What I am appalled by are all of these U.S. politicians who are willing to throw that First Amendment away, put it in the shredder, put it in the trash can to please their masters in Tel Aviv. And they're making it very obvious that they are a puppet ruling body, both with their willingness to pass these kind of laws and to attack Ilhan Omar, while ignoring the very real problems we have in this country. There is so much in this country that needs to be fixed and dealt with, and all we get is political infighting inside the Congress and davening to Israel. That's pretty much all they're good for these days. Story out of UNS.com basically saying that it's getting difficult to write for Americans because after decades of indoctrination, truth is a bias. There's no such thing as absolute truth anymore. It's everybody's personal view of truth, a bias reflecting one's race, gender, upbringing, or predisposition. Emotion overwhelms fact. Biases are not considered to be equal. And, for example, the biases of white people are automatically delegated as hate speech, white supremacy, and hate crimes. And the other problem is that Americans confuse an explanation with a justification. If you try and explain something like slavery, you're presumed that you somehow approve of it and are therefore declared once again a white supremacist. That's not the way to have an adult intellectual conversation, but it's what's coming out of our colleges and universities. Okay, we got to take a break here for station identification, and we'll be right back.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Well, Donna Brazile, the former acting chair of the Democratic National Committee, who left that job under a cloud of suspicion, has now joined the Fox News channel as a contributor. And her job will be to provide political commentary on the Fox News channel and Fox Business Network. She makes her debut appearance on the Daily Briefing with Dana Perino this week. Now, Brazile, of course, is a longtime Democratic operative, and it's another indicator that Fox News is being dragged toward the left by Murdoch's sons. Tucker Carlson's show has hit the #1 spot. Now, advertisers are nervous over this little Media Matters fight. The viewers are loving it, but his ratings keep going up. Keep going up. So, all right. We're going to take a phone call now from Scott in Dallas. Aloha, Scott. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I want to talk about the New Zealand thing a little bit. When it first came out that morning, I saw it at the gym, got home, had a notification pop up so you could go watch it. So me and Cody Snodgrass, we sat and broke it down and looked at a lot of things. And talking about the disappearing brass, if anybody wants to see the video, it has been uploaded on DTube now. It's New Zealand shooting helmet cam uncut, uncensored video, warning graphic content. You can visually watch the cartridges, the brass, disappear out of the frame. None of it ever hits the ground. There was never any muzzle flash that was coming out of a lot of the guns that he was using.
Well, there wouldn't be any muzzle flash from his point of view. That's the whole point of a muzzle brake, isn't it? I mean, a flash suppressor doesn't hide you from the target. A flash suppressor is to keep the flash from dazzling the eyes of the shooter. And I've been sent this video about the brass supposedly disappearing in midair. What you're looking at is motion blur, in the camera shutter.
No, what you're looking at is you're confused. You don't know what you're looking at because I'm sitting here watching it. You're going to sit here and lie to me. I tell you what, here's another thing I want to say. At what point do people lose their salvation and become sinners when they comply with the satanic government? I know it doesn't apply to you because you don't believe in God.
Okay, but as I said earlier in the show, there is a lot of junk being poured out onto the web regarding New Zealand to try and keep everybody confused and from forming a consensus. But I think the one thing we can all agree on, based on the way they're cracking down on that original video, is they've got something to hide. Anyway, thank you for the call, Scott. We're going to let you go here. Get on back to our domestic political news here. Okay. Now, Kamala Harris, who is yet another of the too numerous to count, Democratic presidential candidates, she is now being slammed by Latino activists for refusing to investigate the Ponzi scheme operated by the nutritional supplement marketer Herbalife in exchange for what looks like bribes masquerading as donations from Herbalife lobbyist Heather Podesta. Now, at the time, Harris was the Attorney General of California. Heather Podesta was married to Tony Podesta, the high-powered lobbyist with long-standing ties to Hillary Clinton. Tony's brother, John Podesta, was the campaign manager for Hillary 2016. So, again, it's all deep state. It's all deep state. Okay, getting to the economic news here. Facebook stock has their worst day of 2019 after these executives left, the announcement of investigations by the Attorney General, and an analyst downgrade. And there's concern that more executives may be getting ready to leave the company. They're in trouble over there. And they're in trouble because they forgot their original mission, which was to connect people with each other. And then they decided, well, all of those people we're connecting, that's a resource. We can mine that for information. We can sell that. And then to add insult to injury, they decided, we, the almighty Facebook, will decide what people can and cannot say on our little system. So they're in trouble. I hope, I feel bad for everybody who works there. I hope Facebook gets driven out of business as an object lesson to social media, that you are not as great as you think you are, and that you've got to respect your users. That's really what it comes down to. Whether it's Google, Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, they lost respect for their users. They just see us as the great unwashed. Over at Tesla, they're in a little bit of trouble. There is a 46-page Value Investor Club write-up on Tesla, was published by JCO Viodo on Monday, and basically pointed out that Tesla right now is operating on what could be described as a modified Ponzi scheme, because right now 78% of Tesla's operating cash flow is coming from customer deposits. Now, once that money is in there, it's true that Tesla can do whatever they want, but if they're burning up that money just to keep the company going, then how are they going to pay for the cars they must eventually deliver to those customers? There's an issue there. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Donald Trump is still going over the budget, and he is renewing his efforts to eliminate government funding for PBS and NPR. And he's out there basically saying that they got along fine before on private fundraising. And PBS and NPR, they're very liberal organizations, and the liberals have got a lot of money. And if they want to, fund NPR and PBS, they can. I mean, we've got PBS here on Oahu, and every time I tune into it, yeah, sometimes they'll have some nice classical music, but every time they're talking, it is just all of this far left stuff out there about how we've just got to show respect for the for this particular perversion or that particular perversion. And I got a news message for PBS and NPR. Mental illness is not a civil right. And again, going back to the history of Germany, just before the rise of the Nazis, they had the same loose attitudes about whatever goes and out in the streets just flaunting it. It's the sign of our society falling apart and keeping us so fragmented that we really can't pay attention to what is being done to us by the money junkies and by the government. This is one decision that Trump has made that I'm absolutely in agreement with here. Over at the UCLA Anderson forecast, they've announced that the United States economy is at a very real risk of falling into a recession in the year 2020. That means next year. I think it's going to hit before then. We're already seeing food prices go up here. So there's really no way to head it on off. And it's going to be a bad one, at which point they'll say, well, let's fire up the war as a distraction, because that's what worked the last two times. So here we have the United States of America, a people that broke free of the chains of the British monarchy, that vowed they would never be ruled by an aristocracy that controlled the government and finance. And now we're so distracted by social fragmentation that we're blind. We have become enslaved to a new and formidably informal financial aristocracy. The money junkies, the bankers, they're calling the shots. And we're too busy screaming at each other to see it. We should be looking at it. All right, the Supreme Court has ruled that the federal government can detain immigrants awaiting deportation well after they've completed prison terms for criminal convictions. Now, the pro-immigrant people are out there saying that it's unconstitutional to hold these people for so long without some kind of due process proceedings, because it is a very long waiting list. But I would counter that we're dealing with people who are not covered by the Constitution because they are not U.S. citizens. And more to the point, they are in fact criminals awaiting their deportation or asylum hearings. And I'm sorry that these cases can go on for years. But again, that's the fault of the liberal open immigration people who have just engineered a system. They wanted catch and release. They don't want there to actually be hearings or amnesty hearings. It's just, okay, we got him on this side of the border. Well, you got to let him go. Unconstitutional if you keep him in, in a holding center someplace. You got to let him go. Now, going on back to 2017, Hungary built a 96-mile-long, 14-foot tall, double-line fence, got a road going down the middle of it, includes several layers of razor wire capable of delivering electric shocks. And nearly every police officer in Hungary is part of a rotation to monitor the border fence at all times. Here is the payoff. Okay? Prior to the construction of the wall, they were getting illegal immigrants crossing the borders 6,000 per day. After completing the fence, it dropped to just 40 per day. Walls do work. Over in Great Britain, Piers Morgan basically took on Tony Blair. Tony Blair is out there saying, really, we need a second referendum. There has to be a second referendum. The British public has changed their mind, and we just know that we have to have a second referendum. And Piers Morgan basically tore into him saying, this is the same guy who ignored the will of the people and took Great Britain into war with Iraq, which is absolutely true. The British people did not want to go to war in Iraq, and Tony Blair just went ahead and did it. Over in Pennsylvania, there is a female high school student who has hired attorneys and filed a federal complaint last week alleging her privacy was violated and she was subjected to sexual harassment when a transgender student was using the same locker room. This happened at Honesdale High School, happened at the beginning of the school year. And basically, this female high school student was in the locker room changing and turned around, and there was a guy who had on women's underwear, and he was just staring at her, and she felt very violated and scared. So she went to the school administration to complain about this, and she was told that the only solution was that she would have to wait outside the locker room until the transgender student left, and then she could go in and do what she needed to do, which made her late for gym class or late for other classes. In other words, they acted like she was the one with the problem. And I think she's got a very solid case here. And I think this transgender nonsense has gone on just long enough. It's not real. It is a social trend. It's a fashion. Little kids are being encouraged to say, I'm transgender. And again, it's all about keeping us so confused that we're not paying attention to the direction this nation is going. Okay. Over in Virginia, odd little weird law here. There's a pizzeria, Goody's Pizza, and they decided to spruce up the exterior of their Clarendon location with a mural depicting pizza alongside various common toppings like mushrooms, tomatoes, and olives. And it was going to be a sales tool to get a little more attention from people walking by. Unfortunately, under Arlington County's sign code, no mural painted on the outside of a business may depict the products sold inside. So in other words, if the mural on the side of Goody's Pizza Parlor had featured car parts, clothing, or something else that the restaurant doesn't sell, it would have been left up there. And instead, the zoning officials promptly notified that the mural was out of compliance, and now it's been painted over with a uniform lime green paint job. I think that is a dumb law. I think that is a very dumb law. And, you know, for one thing, you know, painting of murals is going to help the buildings last, keeping the walls sealed from weather, water damage, and so forth. I think it's a dumb law. And it just shows how overly meddlesome government can be when they don't have anything better to do. Remember Roswell, New Mexico? Site of the crash of that balloon that was trying to detect Russian nuclear weapons tests. I forget the name of the project. I think it was Project Orion. Anyway, members of the Roswell, New Mexico City Council voted to make their jurisdiction a sanctuary city for the unborn. This is in response, of course, to all these states and cities that are passing these ridiculous abortion up to the moment of birth laws. Now, this is a purely symbolic gesture because obviously the unborn cannot get to Roswell, New Mexico unless the mother goes there herself. And if the mother is willing to go there herself, then this is a mother who does not intend of getting rid of her unborn child. But I'm glad they made the statement there. I really did. Okay, we have been talking about Captain Marvel, which we are seeing, again, websites are being edited to make this movie seem better than it really is. Rotten Tomatoes was deleting all these negative reviews saying there's just too many of them. It just has to be trolls and robots and so forth. Like, why would anybody bother? But that was their justification. Facebook was taking down negative reviews. Twitter is blocking. And it turns out the reason is this movie is unbridled U.S. military propaganda. They spent a huge amount of money on it, and they're trying to get people to see it. Word of mouth is already spreading. This is a horrible movie. And now Disney's apparently trying a different trick because they're out there saying, this movie is selling tickets, you know, it's doing great box office. But apparently, over at one movie theater, an employee basically went public saying that they sold 570 tickets for the movie through the advanced ticket sales. And when the screening actually happened, only 23 people were in the actual theater. So they're just basically trying to buy up the tickets and generate some fake numbers to try and lure you into the theater. And when it comes on cable, I may look at it. But again, everything that I've read about this coming from a non-military, non-corporate media source is saying that it's trite, it is shallow, it is just all about, you know, rah-rah, U.S. military power is great. And even on our regular cable service today, Claire was noticing over this last weekend, a lot of war movies. There's a lot of war movies out there. Okay, over in Mozambique and Zimbabwe, they're being hit with Cyclone Idai. It's triggered a massive disaster. and it's affecting hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, according to the United Nations. The region has been hit by widespread flooding and devastation, affecting Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi. And it's a humanitarian disaster. It's not nice to fool Mother Nature. Over in Queensland, Australia, they're dealing with tropical cyclone Trevor, which is about to make landfall. And they have yet another storm system coming in from the west. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75%. Dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat. Very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And once again, thanks to everybody who's been donating to Republic Broadcasting and to whatreallyhappened.com. Had you not done so, we might not be here. It is that dire. And we still need your help. This month is very, very tight. And so the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a debit or credit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times. And I had an alert listener email me in the project that led to the Roswell incident was Project Mogul. And now I recall Project Orion was actually an attempt to make a nuclear-powered aircraft, which apparently Russia has succeeded in doing after all these years. Okay, now getting on back to the world of computers here. Do you remember Google Plus? This was the Google's consumer social platform in which it was Google, but you would pay for it and there'd be fewer commercials. Well, it didn't pan on out. And so they basically announced in October of last year they're going to shut it down in August of this year. And Google Plus is now sending out the final warning to back up your data before it's deleted. In fact, that you should do it before April 2nd of this year, or it will be deleted. And apparently they discovered an API bug that was discovered that leaked user information. After another bug was disclosed in December, Google decided to move up the retirement date for the former platform to April. So there's a bug, there's a bug. All right, we're still seeing this tension going on between the United States government and Huawei. And we're seeing the United States literally go to other countries and say, you know, you've got to do business with us. Don't buy your 5G from Huawei. And the U.S. is out there saying, we don't know what China is going to be doing with that system. They could be using it to spy. And what's really ironic is virtually everything the United States is accusing China of potentially doing, we know the United States already does. And so for a lot of countries, it's come down to a question of who do we want to have spying on us, the United States or China? And a lot of countries are out there saying that as far as they can tell, it's going to be easy to make sure that there isn't any malware or spyware on these 5G routers, because that's all that they're buying from Huawei. The real issue, though, of course, is that the United States, specifically the National Security Agency, wants to continue spying on every single electronic device in the world, and Huawei will not cooperate. Huawei is not going to backdoor their 5G routers for the benefit of U.S. intelligence. And especially with all the tension over the Taiwan, the South China Sea, and the tariffs, I don't think anybody would blame China for not wanting to be that agreeable. But the U.S. is definitely out there snooping. Donald Trump is proposing $86 billion for the spy budget. That's a 6% increase over the previous year. And they're out there selling it by saying, well, there's a threat posed by Russia and China. We've got to keep an eye on Russia and China, and that's why we need all this money here. You don't need all that money to keep an eye on Russia. Just call Sarah Palin. She could just look over and take a look at that. Over at the U.S. Department of Commerce, where they're working on artificial intelligence facial recognition systems, a lot of people are concerned about privacy because the Department of Commerce is using photos of immigrants, abused children, and even dead people to train their facial recognition systems. Now, I'm not as up on AI as I probably ought to be in my copious amounts of free time, but I think making facial recognition AI is not going to solve the problem. I think they're going to have even more false positives than they had before, and I base that on the fact that out here on Oahu, we've got the Weather Channel, and it makes a big deal over the fact it uses IBM's Watson, which is an AI system which is supposed to learn by comparing the forecasts with what actually happens with the weather to refine the forecasting ability. And frankly, it's terrible. And I think the part that's missing from AI when it's self-learning is how do you check that what it's learning is correct? How do you know for sure that AI is not, in fact, teaching itself something completely bogus and wrong? How do you reset it? How do you wind it back? And I think the same thing would apply to this facial recognition system. Okay, got to take another break for commercials. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
When your doctor tells you you have bad cholesterol or blockages in the arteries, what do? When diet and exercise is not enough, we try medications and hope for the best. For the last 2 decades, I have been telling people about a natural method to help solve these problems and more. Extendovite can help maintain cardiovascular health and lower blood lipid levels in adults. The 7 herbs in Extendovite are known to work together synergistically to get the results we hope for. There are many testimonials on Extendovite's effect on circulatory-related ailments. Get Extendovite today to start your journey back to a healthier life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or see us on amazon.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go to the phones now to Carlos in Seattle. Aloha, Carlos. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Michael. I'll try to make this relatively short. Oh, and by the way, I've enjoyed your show for many years.
Well, thank
you.
Anyway,
my question is, do you think Alaska's missile deterrent system would be effective against the more modern Russian type of launch vehicles and other capabilities?
Well, first of all, Alaska's missile defense system, like pretty much the rest of the U.S. System, is based on a doctrine, if you will, of a predictable inbound ballistic path. And the whole point of Russia and presumably China's latest weapons is they're not predictable. They basically dance around the sky. And we have top commanders, even in the U.S. military, saying we're not prepared to defend against these, which is another way of saying give us a lot more money so we can come up with something else that probably won't work when we use it. Ultimately, it's all a world of simulations, and fortunately, we really have not had very many examples of these weapons being tested in the real world. They always work well when they're under control testing. But I'm talking real world, get out into an actual conflict and start flinging them at each other, and then we'll see what really works and what doesn't. And again, I think this is the reason why Israel has not gone into Syria ever since the S-400s went online, because if just one F-35 gets shot down, Lockheed just loses it.
Yes, I guess the reason why I asked this, I grew up in Alaska. I have a lot of friends and relatives there. We rely on Fort Greely to counter such a thing. And they use something called exo-atmospheric kill vehicles.
Yes.
Which are, I'm just making an educated guess.
Smart
Those
rocks.
really wouldn't be effective. Because they rely on kinetic energy.
Yeah, well, if you're going fast enough, that usually is going to be sufficient. The nickname for them is Smart Rocks, and it came out of the Strategic Defense Initiative. As far as you're concerned about people in Alaska, in terms of a first strike, what the Chinese and the Russians are going to aim at are the weapons, the missile launchers, the nuclear missiles. So if you're not living near some place where nuclear weapons are being kept or deployed, then you're not going to have to worry about it.
All right. Well, a pleasure talking to you. Have a good day.
Okay, now obviously if you're living in Seattle now, you've got that harbor over there at Bremerton filled with all those warships. That would probably be a target.
Well, we also have, I think, Discovery Park. There's some untalked about facilities there.
Ah,
Anyway,
okay.
Have a good one, Al.
All right, thanks an awful lot. I remember when we were living in Seattle, and we used to, on the weekends, we just drive around the back roads just to explore. And we stumbled across a lot of very odd, very obviously military facilities there as well. Okay, let's go back to the phones. Terry in California. Aloha, Terry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, you're talking about Joe Biden. Well, everybody needs to keep in mind that he proudly proclaimed himself as a Zionist last year. And so factor that in when you decide you might want to vote for him. On the other side of it, I agree with Dustin that, and I'll take it one step further. If you want to see who somebody really is, you look at their staff. You look at the people they appoint. And Trump is obviously a Zionist, too. He wants to take over the world because he's told to do it. Because his staff was Bolton, it's Pompeo, it's all the neocons are still there. Just like when George Bush got elected, he turned the whole government over to him.
Yep.
So I'm afraid we're not too far from that. And,
no, we're
so
right
we'll
back
have
to the project for the new
Republic-
American century.
Yeah, and if you were going to stick with Republicans and Democrats, you get a choice between two Zionists, and I don't think the outcome would be much different. And then if something happens to Trump where he doesn't want to run, you got Pence, who's also in the same boat. He's a neocon Zionist. So, I've kind of given up on that, and I do what Jesse Ventura recommended, which is don't vote for a Democratic or a Republican. Now, the last time I voted for one of those two was Well, I did vote for Romney because I had these friends that said, "Oh, you're going to waste your vote. You're going to waste your vote." And so I did waste my vote. I voted for Romney. That was a waste. And I think, that they try to suppress these other parties. And I know you're not some kid called up one day and you kind of chewed him out for recommending we needed another party. I don't
No,
think
that isn't
I don't
why I
know
chewed
why
him
we
out.
need to be restricted.
I chewed him out because he was just saying people should stop voting, and I didn't think that was a really good idea. That just makes the vote fraud easier.
Well, a guy I'm thinking. Oh yeah, I agree. A guy I'm thinking about though says I think we need a third party, but we already got them. The system is working against them.
Of course.
Can't. We got to. If we want to do something, we find out what that force is and fight that force. So if we want to change our government, we've got to find out what the force is at the top. It's important that we hear about all the symptoms, like we talk about every day on this program. That's good. You have to have that knowledge. But we need to cut to the chase at some point and go right to the top and find out who's controlling who at the very top levels. And then the country get mobilized to attack them. What's your opinion, Mike?
Well, I disagree with the notion that there is a single entity in control of the entire world. What we're seeing are various factions who are vying for control, and unfortunately, they're driving us closer and closer to outright war across the globe. But it's all driven by greed, the lust for power, and again, looking at just how bizarre our civilization is becoming, I have to wonder if we're all collectively just being driven insane by all the chemicals in our life, prescription antidepressants, chemicals in our food. Because when I was a kid, people didn't behave like this. They didn't behave this way. We were much more civilized back then. We had a society. We had a sense of community and cohesion. And today it's just everybody's out there whining and crying and popping their little bubble wrap.
You also got to look at the electronic pollution in the air. I mean, in the atmosphere. We got smart meters, we got Wi-Fi, we got all these, stuff that's, penetrating our bodies and minds. Do you think that's got any, can be another control mechanism why we're
well,
not
I
the same
don't
as
know
we
that
were
it's
then?
a control mechanism, but I've been very, very concerned about the aggregate total of electromagnetic radiation that we are subjected to in the modern urban environment. And I know people like to point fingers and say, oh, it's going to be the 5G, it's going to be the smart meters, it's going to be this. No, it's all of it together. It's the 5G and the 4G and the 3G and the smart meters and the radio stations and the TV stations and the police radios and this. It's not Citizens Band anymore. What do they call it? The general radio telephone system. Radars, of which we have huge numbers operating here on this island. It's all of it together, plus the AC hum from the wall. And does it have an effect? Quite probably, yes. But as far as our behavior is concerned, it does seem like we're descending into a new dark ages.
Yeah, it seems like some people are so easily fooled. Like you're talking about young people and transgender. I mean, even the older ones are, with the left and all this stuff are so easily snowed.
Yes.
With all they start believing it. And why? Because they're told that, and they believe the news. They believe all this stuff.
Well,
I'd
again,
like to
look
say
at
that people are
education.
wise enough, but
modern education has been even Bill Gates admits Common Core was a failure.
yeah. Okay, Mike, I got to call Julie to make a donation. Got to go.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and thank you very much for the donation. We're going to let you go. Getting on back to the world of computers, and we may actually see more of this. Norsk Hydro, which is one of the world's largest aluminum producers, was hit with an extensive cyber attack that crippled some of its infrastructure. And the cyber attack was identified as an infection with the Locker Goga ransomware strain. And so what this company decided to do is they basically switched off the IT systems and they've gone back to manual operations to run the factory. And I think with this growing threat of ransomware, hackers, malware, that we may see more and more businesses sort of turn their back and say, we don't really need all of this automated machinery. You know, let's just go back to doing this the way it worked before when we didn't have to worry about this stuff. Because we know a lot of this stuff gets sold out there in the marketplace and it's bought because it's the latest whiz-bang and people still want to have the latest whiz-bang. Oh, gee, I've got an iWatch 3. I got to get the iWatch 4. I can't be seen with last year's watch. Which in a healthy, functioning economy you can get away with. Today, no. Here's a good example. It's called ASS, the Automated Stop Start System. And this was a thing not too long ago, and the way it works is when you're driving the car and you come to a stop, the engine would shut off. And then the instant you took your foot off the brake pedal to move to the gas, the engine would restart. And the idea was this was going to save you gasoline. This was going to be huge savings in gasoline. Well, as it turns out, no, because in the process of restarting the engine, you're using a lot of gasoline. And worse than that, this is a huge strain on the car's battery. The car's battery is designed to start the car maybe 3 times a day, not 30 to 40. And as a result, owners of these cars with the automated stop-start system are having to replace their batteries much sooner than they normally would. And that more than offsets whatever gasoline savings they think they're getting. Because with this ASS, it's maybe 1 mile per gallon difference in the mileage. But you know what a car battery costs here. All right, we're going to take another phone call. Tom in Connecticut. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I can't believe you're just talking about that because both of the cars that my wife and I drive now have that.
Okay.
I mean, there is a defeat on it. You can hit a button and make it go away. But when we were first driving the car that she got, we thought that it was very. Well, what's happening with this? Is something wrong? We told the salesperson. He goes, "Oh, I should have defeated that before you went out because it seems like the car's stalling out at the light." You know?
Yeah, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like. And I know this because one time we went to one of the neighboring islands and we got a rental car that had this thing in it. We didn't know that's what was going on. I figured it out finally what was going on. I didn't like the feel of it. I don't like the feel of a car.
It's very strange.
You know, that's kind of outside my control.
But I called about Hillary Clinton, and have you listened to Charles Ortel? Any amount of listening to his ideas about the foundation?
Yes.
I can't believe. Now he's been banging the drum since way before the election. I mean, he started, I think, a year before the election, starting to talk about this, and that she would expose herself to these kinds of questions now that he feels are really coming to the fore now.
Yes.
And that they will finally be taken to task at some point. And this would be friggin' Madoff on steroids because they sucked in foreign governments. By his telling of it, this is endless billions of dollars that have just been fraudulently attained by this entity that they call a charity. And unbelievable.
And now we're finding out that the Department of Justice and the Clinton lawyers made a deal so that emails regarding the Clinton Foundation were unavailable to congressional investigators. Now, if William Barr really wants to restore America's trust in the Department of Justice, you end that deal and you make those emails available to congressional investigators.
Just the testimony of these two guys, I don't remember their names, but it was on C-SPAN and it's replayed quite a bit. I mean, they're just going like the guy, the senator or whoever the representative was questioning him. He said, "Well, why didn't you bring this to these people?" They're going, "No, because we found this, and these are the people that can prosecute this stuff. We brought it to them. And they went chapter and verse for about 10 minutes. It was mind-boggling that nobody has picked up the ball on this stuff that has been testified to is blatantly obvious when you start to delve into it, as Charles Ortel has done in great detail.
Yes.
And that the Southern District Court of New York, you know, they're all over Trump because of it. Now, he probably has improprieties too with his charities, but that this is, there's evidently appropriate paperwork hadn't been filed in New York State.
Yes.
All this stuff. And he brings up the specific fact that the woman in Florida had gone to jail recently.
Yes.
For, like, I think $800,000 or something like that. And, you know, that Hillary Clinton, and they're just kind of like floating along, and no one wants to pick up the ball and take them to task for this stuff. But if she throws her hair, you know, out there and thinks she can run for president again, I don't know why she would expose herself to this.
Well, if somebody would prosecute her, all it's going to take is one felony conviction. Even if she's immediately, the sentence is commuted, one felony conviction, she can't run in 2020. What's really interesting, though, is that the foundation's own books are showing they were not doing enough charitable work to qualify as a 501c3, which means Bill and Hillary Clinton are personally liable for the taxes on all of that money. And yet, again, nothing's being done. Anyway, listen, Tom, I got to let you go, and we got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program today after these few words.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just try it yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Last segment of our program today here. You've probably been seeing on TV commercials by the aspirin companies that you should take a low-dose aspirin every day to prevent a heart attack or a stroke. And, of course, it has resulted in huge profits for the aspirin companies. And doctors were saying for decades that a daily 75 to 100 milligrams of aspirin could prevent cardiovascular problems. Unfortunately, the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association have now reversed that idea. They did a large clinical trial and found a daily low-dose aspirin had no effect on prolonging life in healthy elderly people, and actually suggested too much aspirin could be linked to hemorrhaging. But it sold a lot of product. And, you know, that's really what it's all about. And in a nation where science is written to support commerce rather than the truth, you have to be very, very careful. We've been seeing them go back and forth about eggs. Last week there was an article out saying that all this brouhaha about eggs and yolks and cholesterol, it turned out to just be complete and utter nonsense. Well, you know, there was an entire industry that was based on scaring you out of egg yolks. And that were all these companies that would take the eggs and the whites and they would whip them up and they'd put them in a carton and put all kinds of health promises on there and sell it for a lot more than an egg straight out of the rear end of a chicken would have cost you. Huge little markup. And so already we're seeing a pushback where there's another study saying that 1 egg a day increases your risk of stroke death by 17%. But their data was faulty. It was flawed, and they're hoping that you are so Common Core educated you don't realize it. So this debate has been going on. But really, you need to be careful about all these studies that say thus and such, and ask what industry, whose pocketbook benefits from all of this. And finally, a very tragic little story. This came out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain. The number of young people visiting U.S. emergency rooms with psychiatric problems is rising, driven largely by a surge in teens and minority youth seeking urgent help for mental illness. Between 2011 and 2015, there was a 28% increase in psychiatric emergency department visits among young people ages 6 to 24. 6? Are you kidding me? Visits spiked 54% for teens, 53% for African American youth, 91% for young Hispanic patients. Suicide-related visits climbed more than twofold during the study period. Well, you have to look at those numbers and realize something that we're doing isn't working. Except, of course, it's selling product and making money for the medical industrial complex. And we need to go back and look. Is it these medications that are causing these problems? Are they making these people worse rather than better? Anyway, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learned from us, share it with everybody that you know. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. Without you, we will not be here. So have a good evening. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Aloha, America.